Russell T Davies presided over one of the greatest destructions of a franchise when he turned Doctor Who from this.
I'm the Doctor. I'm a Time Lord.
That's who I am. Time Lord Victorious.
The Time Lord Victorious is wrong.
That's for me to decide.
Basically, run.
Into this.
Greet you, good to greet you. Good to say how diddly teach you.
Yes, we know.
We know everything. Thanks.
And you know nothing?
I promise I can help him get home and then you'll never see me again.
You're assuming he as a pronoun.
And yet, despite this, he doesn't think that Doctor Who will define his legacy. It's not the IP that'll be on his gravestone, because he buried it first.
Is this world protected?
Just surrender. Lose. Give in.
The quote is enlightening, though. In the end, my heart will always be with the things that I own. Like, that controls what defines his legacy. You don't get to define your own legacy, but if you're very self-absorbed, if everything you write is about you, I can see why you'd think you would. It's falls from grace such as this that cause people to look back on your history to try and work out how did this happen, and how can we stop it happening again? That leads people to investigate the 10 harsh realities of rewatching Russell T Davies' first era, most notably of which is, the best episodes of RTD's original era were written by other people. Many of the standouts from his first era are actually by Steven Moffat, which is something we'll look at later in the video, the differences between Russell T Davies and Moffat. These are two people on entirely different levels of thought. Even down to some comments by Russell T Davies which seem to provoke just disgust in Moffat.
The controls are over there by the wall, and they have a settee here, and that'll be the strangest.
Because Moffat is a person that thinks on the levels of concepts and ideas, whereas for Davies, it's just his life, his perspective, which not only influences the topics that he discusses, but also how he writes them, and the limits of what he can write. And it does seem to be that everything he writes is just from his perspective. I've watched a lot of his interviews now, and a lot of them just seem to be him talking about which hole he shoves it in. It's a very weird topic of general conversation to feel the need to keep bringing up. And yet it seems to be so all-encompassing for him that he doesn't understand that's a very niche market. A small, niche market. Something we find out about in this interview.
He joins us now, Mr. Russell T Davies. Welcome to the show.
I tell you what, Cilla Black's let herself go.
And I've got a lot of surprises to get through.
Now, the interview starts with Russell T Davies proving that stereotypes are just incorrect.
When for you does you decide that you want to get into the showbiz world, entertainment?
Well, I loved theatre when I was young, and I gave my bottom to Swansea.
Did you? It is the best city in the world, though.
It absolutely is. And of course, great big gay scene. What sailors have you met?
Too many.
And I put this not for judgment reasons, but to show his lifestyle, what's at the forefront of his mind when he gets asked an interview question. That these topics are just his personal experience, rather than anything that should be in the piece of work, as this is a very specific target demographic, and so while it would fit in a niche program for niche audiences, it doesn't really fit in mainstream programs which are aimed at families, as changing a mainstream IP into this not only alienates the majority of the population and those families, but also alienates your target demographic who already liked the original IP, as proven in this very interview.
Mine was Sylvester McCoy, unfortunately. Very good, but it was a bit too campy towards that end, wasn't it? Yeah, even for me. You can imagine if I'm saying that says everything, doesn't it?
If Sylvester McCoy was too campy for him then, imagine his opinion on Ncuti Gatwa.
I think you and I should go outside. Fast people.
I didn't become a little bit of a slag, I became a total slag.
It turns out that most normal people in the world don't need IPs turned into their personal bedroom. And yet, this enlightened wisdom seems to have eluded Russell T Davies.
You've tapped into the proper LGBT side of everything.
Which was always there.
Yeah.
I think it was just nudging by 1% in that direction.
We're just nudging like 1%? Yes, 1% apparently turns Doctor Who from this.
Rid the universe of your filth. Why don't you just die?
Into this. Not a parody.
What on earth do you think you're wearing?
The future!
Just 1% change, 1% of what? I could fully believe, compared to his personal life, this is just a small step into what he gets up to. But for your family audience of 2.4 children, believe me, this is way over the line. This is a big leap. I still like the interviews they're going, but I said it was too far for me. I don't want 1% that way. Now, to be fair, Russell T Davies does have a really strong reason for the change, backed up by foundational economic principles.
It's 2025.
Uh-huh.
I hope you pitched it to Disney Plus like that. They're like target market, demographics, population of potential audiences, and you're like, have you seen a calendar? I mean, a bit flippant though, that wasn't his only reason.
And you also have to look at what the others are doing. I find a lot of the other science fiction franchises very straight, very masculine, very testosterone-y.
Now, I think when he's talking about looking at the other franchises, we've got to look at things that we know he's watched, such as he was talking to Kurtzman about how much he loves Star Trek Discovery.
I'm such a fan of Discovery, it's absolutely my favourite.
That strong, testosterone, masculine franchise.
She's pretty fast.
They're fast. They, not she. I've never felt like a she.
And Strange New Worlds, which even had a Doctor Who crossover in one of its most recent episodes.
When you got your dramas, one of these days we'll repay you, we'll slay you.
On your knees, Spock.
So we can understand if that's your bar for testosterone-filled masculinity, how you end up at Ncuti Gatwa as 1% more. This is the perfect example, though, of perception being reality. He only judged things from his worldview, and he can't actually comprehend not being himself. So as he lives in a bubble of this, surrounded by all the extremes, of course, what he's doing is toned down. And yet to normal people, it looks completely unhinged.
And so that's our space. Do you think that's where Doctor Who can fill a space?
And he should know about that. Judging from his interviews, he's filled quite a few spaces in his time. Now, personally, I would say that converting a mainstream IP designed at families and 97% of the population to alienate those people in an attempt to pick up a tiny fraction of 3% of the nation that don't even like your show because the ones that already like what it was now despise what you've turned it into.
Why the hell, everybody, are we actually spending good time in talking about this utter crap? Because this is clearly not Doctor Who. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. Good night.
That seems like a terrible idea to maintain an audience. Well, you're not maintaining it, are you? You're destroying one in the hope of picking up a much smaller one. I've already told you, I don't think he's very bright. But when you actually spell it out, it sounds even worse. The thing is, if you watch his other interviews, you actually find out there are other motivations behind this. And there's one answer you might give in an interview when everyone's pulled you to task for destroying Doctor Who, compared to one you've done earlier, when you may not have been so cautious about your wording.
Russell T Davies, do you have a gay agenda? Without us just saying, oh, but they're just bigots.
I know, but do you really believe that question? You've agreed with my answer before I've even said it. That Toby. People complain when two little flies pop up and buzz around their heads and annoy them. It's like, actually, it is your problem. Yes, it's someone else's problem. I will make it their problem again and again and again. And the more you do that, the problem will go away in the end. Because it'll just normalise.
He can't consider that the problem's him. It has to be somebody else. And in fact, it seems like he enjoys deliberately annoying them. They get annoyed and pissed off for so long that they achieve learned helplessness and just stop talking about the new low quality of entertainment. And I don't want it to appear like I'm using people as a human shield, but I just want to solidify that this is his personal worldview and not some overarching monolith of opinion from his community.
I've been watching Doctor Who since 1972 on a regular basis, and I was sat there last night thinking, am I witnessing finally what I think is the end of the Doctor Who I know? After Rogue, my instinct was the Doctor needed a slap. He needed a cold shower because he was letting a certain member of his body lead his head.
Now I can get entertainment from awful shows, and the more you try and push this stuff, the funnier I find it. But I'm a bit of an edge case, and there are people out there who are watching something they've loved for decades be destroyed in front of their eyes. And that is sad in and of itself, especially when it's being done to normalize something, all by deliberately doing something you know they'll despise.
It's still radical, it's still exceptional, it's still a very brave thing to do.
You can dress this up in any way or language you want, pretend you're as compassionate as you want, but the truth has shown itself, and the fact that you want to inflict this on people really makes it seem like it's done more out of a spite and bile. But maybe there are some writers out there that could have got away with it. Maybe they would have found a way to do social impact entertainment and convince people that, no, actually, this is fine. Russell T Davies isn't that man. When you find out his motivations for doing it, and just the limit of his capability, the outcome in hindsight seemed inevitable. Like, he has freely admitted that he has no idea whether Billy Piper is the Doctor, which is probably because he did it last minute, and didn't have really any plan. It was basically a gimmick with no depth to it. Like the rest of his writing. And yes, I'm still pissed that Ruby Sunday's mom was special because she wasn't special, just like everybody else.
She was important because we think she's important.
What do you mean?
I will use this spoon. I promise. Babes, remember it harder.
But Russell T Davies apparently returned to Doctor Who to protect it amid Disney deal, before promptly destroying it with his personal ideology, and criticising any of the audience that didn't like it by just going, I have no time for this, I don't have a second to bear it, and his cast saying that it's just caring about people. I just think we're doing the right thing if we're getting comments like that, and if anyone has a problem with it, you're not really truly a fan, you've not been watching. If you've got a problem with anything that's been happening in Doctor Who, it's actually just really sad for you. And yes, it was, because it turns out the more episodes that Russell T Davies writes of a series, the worse it gets. Well, except when he added 4 new writers to the fold, who somehow managed to be worse than him. Someone who's more cynical than me might even suggest that it was deliberate to take some of the backlash away from him. But the more you find out about why Russell T Davies writes so many episodes of Doctor Who, and the way he writes them, the more it makes sense how they turned out.
Because I write most of them, and while I'm there, I always will, because I'm a writer. I'm not there to produce. You know, I literally get paid per script. People say, why don't you write less Doctor Who's? I'm like, I get paid by script. It's yes, I'll give that away.
He writes so many, not because he thinks he's the best person to do it, or because he has so many amazing ideas that just have to get on the screen. It's because of personal gain. Just like the content of him is used to infuse it with his own personal message that he wants to annoy everybody else with to normalise things, he also inflates his bank balance at the same time. Or we may preach about just being kind to people and compassion, only to dig a little deeper and find more selfish reasons.
So much fun doing this.
Yes, it is. And it's also horrible because things don't work. It's hard to write Doctor Who. It's very, very hard to write Doctor Who.
It's very strange when he talks about how difficult it is to write, and I can't help wondering if it's just because it can't all be from his perspective. A lot of his other shows are basically just his life in Manchester, but Doctor Who involves him trying to think a bit more abstractly, which can be difficult. But even in this sense, you have the contradiction of it's incredibly difficult to write, and yet...
kind of write every episode in a fortnight, which is quite quick. I think a lot of people go, wow, that's quick.
Yeah, to bang out a script every 2 weeks. You'd think it'd be poorly thought out, really shallow, and full of plot Oh. But one of the reasons I set the scene about how he just writes from his perspective, and everything is just a product of his life experience and his worldview, how he doesn't seem to be able to actually simulate other people's perspectives or see anything from their point of view, is because he also doesn't seem to be able to grasp sort of timelines very well. He can't simulate what it would be like to be in the future.
I do get stuck partly because I can't skip order in a script. I have to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in order. I don't believe the next scene exists until the scenes before it exists.
Isn't that weird? That seems weird, especially the I don't believe that next scene exists until this one. He's stuck in the now, the moment. He can't imagine what it would be like to be in the future. He even says as much.
Some people, they can write scenes 1 and 2, they can jump to scene 40, they can start writing that. If scene 40 is 2 brand new people arriving in a car, they can start to write that. I can't do that.
I can only imagine this is because he can't put himself into their perspective. There's actually quite a few writers like this. This was a problem in Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, where all of the characters had to know the same information at the same time. And in fact, in one scene, somebody went, "We need the wheat!" And suddenly, everyone across the universe thought that was the reason that they were going to the planet, even when it wasn't.
It's the grain. Look, they piled it against the building so we can't destroy them. Clever.
There are some writers that can't simulate different characters' perspectives with their own different information and knowledge. It's, if the writer knows the answer, all the characters do. I think that's what's happening here. He can't jump ahead to write the car scene because he would have to put themselves in their perspective and remove information that he has. So he has to write up to that point, and when he's done that, he's now sitting in their world at their point in time, and that allows him to then write their perspective because it's his. So with all that in mind, when he's asked the question of, why did you go back to Doctor Who?
Why did you want to go back to the Doctor?
It's a chance to write pictures and ideas that you don't get anywhere else. And it's especially true of me going back to it.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes it seem like you went back for money, and because it makes a great platform. He can put things in this show he wouldn't be able to anywhere else, and reach an audience that he wouldn't be able to communicate with.
You know, would you get away with inventing something like this now? The fact that it's got 60 years behind it is a great benefit.
Oh, I don't know whether I could get away with this now, but because I'm perverting something which has 60 years behind it, I can do exactly what I want with this.
Simply write quite naturally. I don't think about it that much. That is my world, and I'm trusted by my bosses to put my world and to put my writing on screen, so I confidently do. It doesn't even feel particularly queer to me. It just feels natural. This is the world. Twitter might kick off, and in dark little corners people might argue, but that's not the real world.
Because it's his world. Nothing feels strange to him because it's his life. And so not being able to simulate and represent a family's point of view was seemingly inevitable. And all of this is in contrast to Steven Moffat, who, it doesn't really matter what you think of him, even just hearing him talk, watching them in interviews, the contrast is stark.
Still find yourself coming up with ideas and thoughts for Doctor Who? Because I think you've said before that you...
No.
No. No, he never did at the time, frankly. I had to do it all.
I used to get his factory sweepings.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
It's interesting that it's switched off instantaneously. Oh, I left Doctor Who, never thought of it again. It's more evidence that he lives exactly in the moment. There is no past or future, there's just now. And if I'm not doing it now, completely leaves my brain altogether. This is in contrast to Moffat.
Listen,
Do you think of stories?
yeah, I kind of do.
Do you?
I think of monsters.
Stop with me like that.
No, you never.
With Moffat, it continues because he's still making connections in his head. He's spotting patterns, being creative. He's not just writing his perspective at this moment in time, all the time. And it seems to blow Russell's mind, or it's almost like he doesn't believe him.
Do you never think you see something scary and think that could be a Doctor Who monster? I do think that.
Do you?
Whereas the only connection that Russell makes is, again, down to what he's directly perceiving at that moment in time.
I honestly do.
I see films and I think that's Doctor Who and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I can watch somebody else's creation and think that would have been a good Doctor Who thing, but he's not creating new things himself. So if you have someone who can't think of their own perspective, can't even simulate other places in time, and then compare that to Moffat, who is actually given thought to why stories even exist in the first place. What do people get out of them? What is it that is a part of stories that makes humans connect to them? Why do we care? That every story anyone tells is a morality story. The only way you can involve people in fiction is to force them to ask what would they do in that situation. It's the imaginary arena where we work out what's the right thing to do and what the consequences are. He just adds comedy. Stories exist to simulate a reality, which allows you to benefit from the experience of the action without going through the dangerous situation itself. It allows you to think about what you would do and see the effects of that play out in front of you without actually needing to live through the war or fight the dangerous aliens. This is why I think we don't get connected to certain stories, because the moment they become unrealistic, not in, oh, it's a fantasy setting, but because the humans aren't acting how they would in reality in that situation, your mind automatically rejects it as, I have nothing to learn from this. I think this is why people reject things like girl boss characters. They're obviously unrealistic, don't actually exist, and so just get spontaneously rejected as useless. If you ran your simulations from that and learned from that experience, it would actually be dangerous to you in real life, as you would teach yourself the wrong actions. And whereas Russell seems to be very locked in himself, Moffat has the ability to zoom out and look at his own worldviews, and even see the contradictions in his own belief system. He talks about how if you take the comedy away from Doctor Who, the Doctor himself is terrifying. This is a guy running into the middle of every fight he can find and deciding who should win. People get one chance, then he exterminates their entire species. This in itself is an interesting idea. It's balancing the scales of justice. Rather than the modern Hollywood morality of everyone should be kind and compassionate all the time. The far more realistic, masculine worldview is that actually people who do horrible things should have horrible things done to them, and that's good. The worse the villain, the more punishment is required to balance those scales. And the Doctor is the person to do that because he's quite frankly better. And that position is innately hierarchical, which is the antithesis of equality. If the Doctor wasn't superior, he would have no right to judge. But Moffat, in talking about how his Doctor avoided killing but showered scorn on soldiers, he says it's an interesting dilemma for a wet liberal like me. My wet liberal freedom is maintained by remorseless thugs. That's how I'm able to lecture the remorseless thugs on their remorseless thuggery. It's the Section 31 to Picard in the Federation. Picard can go around with his prime directive and high ideals because Section 31 exists. They sacrifice themselves and take on the hard choices so that Picard can maintain his innocent high ideals. Every innocent person needs someone to get down in the muck so that they don't have to.
I believe in something greater than myself, a better world.
And yet you violate those principles as a matter of course in order to protect them.
I'm not going to live there. There's no place for me there. I'm a monster.
But a lot of the innocent lecturers couldn't zoom out enough to realise that. They would condemn the soldier without ever realising that they're actually necessary. The fact that he can understand and discuss this is a level of abstraction that I just don't think Russell T Davies would ever be able to comprehend. That's why he's a better writer. Russell T Davies, trapped in the now, means that he can kind of destroy anything. The past doesn't really mean anything to him because it's already gone. What matters is the now that he's living in. This actually shows itself in their conversation, which is a kind of glorious exchange that I don't think Russell T Davies understood.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even though our different titles is this, this in the middle,
is always that
there, and the walls.
Russell can recognise that Doctor Who has always been a certain way, that traditions have built up, although nobody uses that word, which are important to the soul of Doctor Who, and yet because he lives in the moment, he doesn't seem to value any of it, and has absolutely no problem with changing it and destroying it.
One day there will be a Doctor Who where the controls are over there by the wall, and they have a settee here, and that'll be the strangest.
This is in stark contrast to Moffat, who displays visible disgust at the idea of changing this tradition.
And they have a settee here, and that'll be the strangest.
And then goes on to explain tradition and the importance of it.
Isn't that strange thing if you were ever to sit and boil down any given show to the things that really matter? Because you wouldn't understand them.
Tradition is the built-up combined wisdom of everyone that's ever contributed to a project. And so whether you realise why it's there or not, it doesn't matter.
Like, it matters that it's a police telephone box, even though none of us have really seen them.
Those things were preserved through time for a reason, and everyone got together and all agreed they were all really important. To change that will be to change the very core of what the thing is. And so it doesn't matter whether you don't understand why it's like that. You maintain it because you trust in the combined wisdom of all of your ancestors, which you can't compete with because you're just you, and you are inferior to combined everybody else.
And in fact, our police telephone box has had a longer life and is more famous as a time machine than it was as a police telephone box. The Doctor's time machine is disguised as a time machine. I mean, it's absolutely nuts.
This, though, requires a more zoomed-out perspective. You have to be able to abstract and simulate other people's point of view and actually realise that they should be valued. This is impossible for someone that only sees the world from their perspective, like Russell. This means that if you put someone like him in charge of a franchise, he has no problem changing and destroying it. Because if it's not like him, it has to be changed. Whereas Moffat understands the sanctity of what other people have created, and that things from the past have innate value because they have survived for this long, regardless of whether you think it does or not, or can understand why it does.
But you cannot change that. You cannot change the central console. It must be like that. And there've got to be round things somewhere.
This is why Russell can't even write a companion from a different time.
We can write anything. We're good writers. We can write anything. But you have to be writing this, especially from the heart. So your heart's going to be with someone who is now.
He lives in the moment, so his heart will always be with someone from now. Because, well, that's my perspective. It's not even curiosity, but what it would be like to have a companion from a different time. What would their perspectives on the world change? What kind of interesting ideas and analysis can you find out when you actually took, like, a Victorian woman and then showed a modern day? The judgments that she would have, and the questions of, maybe she's correct. And this is something that Moffat attempted and struggled with, and when asked why by Russell, he just can't understand the answer.
Why didn't Clara the Victorian work?
It stuttered along. It was constantly having to remember we're not now viewing the Doctor from our world, but viewing the Doctor from her world, which is different from ours.
Well, Moffat is talking about the difficulties of simulating different people's perspectives from across time. Russell listens to him spell out what the problem was, and yet only take this from it.
It's manners, isn't it? It's mannerisms.
He didn't like it.
Was it
electricity?
It's just mannerisms, isn't it? Oh, she'd just be surprised by electricity. That's the depth to which he understood the answer. Not this person comes from an entirely different place in culture, and therefore she'd look at what you created and call you an abomination. That you would be faced with your own target demographic that would despise what you've done. No, electricity. It's so basic an analysis as to become farcical. Russell even talks about writing the Doctor for different actors. And it says he doesn't really write the character as different, it's more the actor that fills it in. Because if he tries, he just ends up with something.
You just end up with mannerisms and affectations and
yeah.
nonsense, ephemera.
It just ends up with something surface level. Yeah, and I can't imagine a Doctor that would be so basic as his only personality to be mannerisms and affectations.
Because you have put ice in my heart, darling.
You really should stop.
All right, babe, what's the year?
The universe is wild, babe.
How benevolent of you, baby.
Oh, sweetheart. Wait, what happened?
You stop that right now, sweetheart.
Pretty much a dream come true, babe.
Even in this, Russell immediately goes on to contradict himself. That'd be really stupid if it was only mannerisms that made up the Doctor. How stupid would that be? How basic and sad would that be if that was the limit of your writing?
I'm talking about ephemera, but I do like having someone who says babes and love and darling.
Yeah, see, it's funny.
I like that.
That'd just be really basic and shallow, wouldn't it? Although I am a shallow person myself. You know, as this goes on, I understand why he said it's 2025, of course this is happening. Because it takes the logic of 2025 for a massive company like the BBC to think that this is the correct person to shepherd in one of your biggest IPs, and for Disney to give them millions of dollars. Especially in a brief conversation about any depth, would have uncovered the lack of care about ideas or concepts, things which are core to telling a good story. And again, even if you live in the now, everything stays, and we get the wisdom of Russell T Davies's Hindsight.
You said that you felt old-fashioned because you didn't cast Doctor Who as a woman.
I can't wait for next year for Jodie Whittaker in 2018. That's a great place to end, actually, because it's like, how exciting is that going to be?
Jodie Whittaker was going to be amazing. How exciting to finally get a female in Doctor Who. What a great place to end. Of course, he would have no problem with changing the core aspects of Doctor Who. No care about tradition or even understanding why it's important.
But you cannot change that. You cannot change the central concept. It must be like that.
To him, it's all in the moment and everything needs to be updated just to be those flies around the whiny people's heads. If we piss them off, all the better. Imagine being the person at Disney where a brief conversation, a browse through his previous interviews could have saved you hundreds of millions of dollars. Seriously, Hollywood, if your job is so easy, how do you keep messing it up this much? It really is no surprise that there's going to be a pause in Doctor Who, where even the fans are saying there needs to be a meaningful break, and why even though Russell was like, I've been planning season 4 and 5, the property has been tainted so much that Steven Moffat just will not return. And I personally don't blame him. This is the BBC, and there's too many people at the BBC with Russell Davies's attitude. As Mark Gatiss said, nostalgia is the great enemy of Doctor Who. They live in the now and can't appreciate why things have to be a certain way. That Doctor Who is an innately British property, an English property, and as such it has our cultural values embedded within it. Things like a love of tradition. Things have progressed too far for Danny Dyer to be the saviour of Doctor Who. Just like Hollywood, to save Doctor Who, you'd need a clearing out of people at the BBC.
Sack Russell T Davies, sack Jane Tranter, sack Phil Collinson, sack Julie Gardner, and I'll come back.
You'd have to hire new people that actually hold the correct values required to make Doctor Who correctly in the first place. So I agree with Russell T Davies. This won't be considered one of his greatest hits, but it will be considered his greatest failure. It may not be his property, he doesn't own it, it's not his, but he did graffiti it, he did demolish it, deconstruct it, and that will be his legacy. He's not going to be known for doing some fringe dramas for a small niche audience, but he will be remembered for being the one that killed Doctor Who. And the claim that it'll be saved by the spin-off series of The War Between the Land and Sea, that the spin-off is even better than we thought it was, I don't think is going to convince anybody. In fact, after all this, I think the real shame is that the fans of Doctor Who won't be able to move on from it as easily as Russell T Davies did. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.